Welcome to Seeking Paradise, reflections on spirituality, community, and justice. Welcome to Seeking Paradise podcast. I'm Stephen Lingwood. I want to talk about something today. Some people will say the important thing in religion is becoming Christian. But the more radical challenge, I think, that I want to speak to briefly today is not becoming Christian, but becoming Christ. The mainstream Christian tradition invites us to worship this man called Jesus. But there's a radical fringe tradition where I sit that invites us not to worship this man, but to become like him. The way Jesus lived, the radical love, the total love, the radical freedom, this radical sense of peace that Jesus incarnated, that Jesus lived in his life, can be available for us as well. Because Jesus lived out his true identity, his true sense of self, and in doing that was so transparent with divinity, was so rooted in God, that was obvious for people to see that who met him. Something was very distinct about him, that they could see his true being rooted in God. And they wanted to listen to him, and they wanted to spend time with this person. And either during his lifetime or after he died, they gave him this name of Christ, this one who is the one who is anointed with holy oil, Christ. But Jesus became this Christ, this word we can use for this, his true self, by letting the love of God flow through him and living out his true identity as a child of God. But should our response to this be to say, yes, he was so committed to love, he was able to live non-violently with this deep freedom, rejecting material wealth and envy and riches, but that's too difficult for us to do. Oh yeah, he did that, but that's too difficult for a mere mortal to do. Or can we say that radical way of being, that way of being committed to total love, is also available to us? That we inherently have a Christ identity as well. That's our inner true nature. And if we let the love of God flow through us, we can become Christs as well. Not merely Christians, but Christs. One of Jesus' teachings was, a tree is known by its fruit. That means out of a life rooted in God, we can produce the fruits of joy, of compassion, of peace, of shalom. And that's what it means to be a Christ. The danger is we think this is a special thing. We think, this is an idea of us pumping up ourselves, of being, full of ego, saying, I am a Christ, I am Christ. But in fact, it's really the exact opposite of that. In a sense, being Christ is an ordinary thing. It's to truly be human. It's a natural thing. It's living out of a deeper sense of who we are, not the sense of the ego that wants to be better than other people, to compare ourselves with being better or worse, or being concerned with those things. That's the anxiety of the ego. And the Christ is the sense of self that's not the ego, that's the deeper, truer sense of self, is the Christ self. And the whole purpose of spiritual practice is the defeat of the ego and the rooting of our sense of identity in the truer sense of self, the Christ self, the true humanness of our human nature, to become more human, And other people might name this differently. I tend to think when Buddhists talk about the inner Buddha nature, the inner Buddha, I tend to think we're talking about the same thing. And this, when I play with the idea of a kind of a Buddhist Christianity, I keep playing with that idea of what would it look like for a Christianity that was sort of Buddhist in the way it operated. I think this is one of the things I'm talking about. I'm talking about an emphasis on our inner nature being transformed through spiritual practice, through a Christ path of transformation. Not to say there aren't other paths of transformation, and that there are similarities across those paths of transformation. But the Christ path of transformation, I think, is characterized by three things. By a daily commitment to contemplative prayer, by a commitment to meditating upon the words of Jesus, particularly the parables of Jesus, to be rooted not in what other people have said about Jesus, but in the actual teaching of Jesus, the words of Jesus, the parables of Jesus, to keep meditating upon those words and seek deeper and deeper meaning in them. And the outward commitment to serve others, to work for justice, to work for shalom, for peace in the world, to the extent that each of us is able to, depending on our particular circumstances. So contemplative prayer, studying the parables of Jesus, and activism in the world is the Christ path towards transformation, towards realizing our true Christ identity. Being Christ within and creating the kingdom of God in the world. Discovering in the world that sense of paradise where there is a deeper love that connects us. Through becoming who we were meant to become, our true self, as human as we're able to become, as you, the path of becoming as you, as divinely you, as you can be. Not the you of your ego, not the you of your anxious anxiety, but the you of your true deep self, your Christ self, your transformed self that is the potential within you, within me, within everyone. That life of being transformed, of being rooted and living through total love is available to all of us.